Link's Awakening will forever be one of my favorite Zelda games due to the simple fact that, for the first time in the series, you are not the good guy. The Legend of Zelda has had several different iterations, conquering time, and Twilight, and trains, and 8-bit graphics, and being 4 dudes, and being 3 dudes, and trains, and Soul Calibur 2, and trains. Choo-choo! But in every one, you're fighting to save the land, save the princess, defeat evil, etc. But in Link's Awakening, your goals are entirely selfish. Helping these people, completing dungeons, irreparably damaging the moblin population of the spooky woods. Link does all of this for one reason: to leave by any means necessary, and in doing so destroys the island and everyone on it. And somehow, through the most selfish and morally gray Zelda game, filled to the brim with disposable characters and lacking any consequences for the series overall, the game manages to give the most heartfelt lessons about relationships, dreams, growing up, and moving on. It's impossible to talk about the morals of a story without addressing the story, or in this case, the game itself. Link's Awakening takes place following a terrible storm which rips our fabled Hero of Legends ship apart, washing him up on the shores of Koholint, an island filled with friendly people, recognizable enemies and characters, and several items that are all too familiar. Link is taken in by a girl named Marin and her wannabe Mario-ass father, Tavern. Get the fuck back to the Mushroom Kingdom, dumbass! Marin takes an immediate interest in you from the beginning, in part because she's never left Koholint. While the entire island is fun and whimsical, you can tell something's not entirely right. While some of the characters and enemies are recognizable, many of them aren't from Zelda. Goombas, piranha plants, that dude from Sim City, are they supposed to be here? Never mind that, this is Zelda, you know the deal, and more importantly, Link knows the deal. This is the Hero of Legends' 4th adventure. At this point, he is a seasoned veteran. Ignore the hair. Look, I get it, everyone goes through a phase. There's 8 mandatory dungeons to beat before you can defeat the big bad guy and go home. The goal is to collect 8 instruments and awaken something known as the Windfish. In between dungeons, the game forces you to solve puzzles, explore the world, and interact with the inhabitants in order to proceed. Like on this date with Marin. But once you get to the 5th boss, or Nightmare as they're called in this game, I wonder why, they begin to make ominous statements about your purpose on the island. Before the 6th dungeon, you learn that the island of Koholint is within the dream of the Windfish, and by awakening it, the island will be destroyed and everyone on it will cease to exist. At this point in the game, the true weight of your journey begins to seep in. It begins to make sense why the enemies are weird, why the characters and island are all completely new, why all of the items are ones from your previous adventures. Because it isn't real. It's a mix between Link's dream and the Windfish's. Link didn't wash up on the island. He's still floating at sea, and if you don't wake up, he will drown. Fine, fuck it, wake the fish up, I don't give a shit. Oh, the impact of beating this game isn't told to you so much as it's shown through the people you've met and come to know. Ulrira, the kind old man who helps you over the phone but is too shy to talk in person. Taran, who let you recover in his house and also got turned into a raccoon by eating some funny mushrooms. This bear who likes honey and also makes really good soup. And Marin, who you've come to know incredibly well. You know how she feels about him. You know she's banned from the Crane game for being too good. You know what she'd do if she was a seagull. And that's how this game delivers its theme. Every interaction in Link's Awakening is set up to connect you to these new characters and the world, only to rip that out from under your feet when you realize the truth of the island. A lot of people talk about this game's trading quest. It's infamous. The game gives you the opportunity to trade up from a Yoshi doll to the magnifying lens and the boomerang. This type of quest isn't unique to Link's Awakening, but I think it does it best because it forces the player to interact with the new inhabitants of this ultimately doomed island. And unlike many games, especially Nintendo games, there is no better ending. This is it. By doing this, by locking the player into this linear experience, it brings the player a sense of turmoil and stakes and a lesson that wouldn't be felt with a better ending. In these aspects, Link's Awakening reminds me of one thing in particular. Shakespeare's Hamlet. I swear to God, I'm being 100% serious. Now, my real Shakespeare fans will know that no, this game doesn't follow the exact outline of a Shakespearean tragedy. But just bear with me for a section known as Tweets Online's incredibly rushed and very superficial overview of Shakespeare's Hamlet so that you can better understand Link's Awakening. And go. So there's this king, the king of Denmark. His name is Hamlet. He fucking dies. We don't care about him. We care about his son, whose name is also Hamlet. Young Hamlet comes home and finds that his mother has very quickly married his late father's brother, aka his uncle, Madge Claudius. Surprise, surprise, Claudius murdered old King Hamlet. according to who? The ghost of old King Hamlet, of course. Hamlet is very conflicted about killing either his uncle or himself. That's to be or not to be. And through all of this, Denmark is in a pseudo-war with Norway. The king of Norway's name is Fortinbras. This is important. Then there's Ophelia, and she really doesn't matter for our purposes, and neither does Horatio or like a bunch of other interesting characters. Read Hamlet. Hamlet tries to get on a boat to England. The boat crashes. That's wrong. It was captured by pirates. My bad. But Hamlet survives and comes back to Denmark like a while later. He gets into a duel with Laertes, who I didn't mention, and he's a whole other thing. And then there's some shenanigans with some poison that ends up killing fucking everyone. And then while Hamlet's dying, he says on Fortinbras, he has my dying voice. Meaning Hamlet just gave control of Denmark to the invading king of Norway, and then he dies and it ends. Okay. So I understand that was a lot, and it wasn't done very well. Hamlet is very long. So what the fuck am I talking about, and why am I going on tangents about fucking Hamlet, and how does that apply to Link's Awakening, a game that came out about 393 years later? Because the two stories share one main thing. A key aspect of a Shakespearean tragedy is that while yes, everybody usually fucking dies, the world doesn't end there. That tragedy paves the way for a bright future. Now, of course, my video game fans are thinking, wait, but I thought in his dying breath, Hamlet gave control of the kingdom over to the invading king of Norway, Fortinbras. How is that hopeful? One of the recurring ideas in Hamlet is that something is rotten in the state of Denmark. But with the deaths of the entire royal family, that rot is gone. With that and several other indicators, you're supposed to see that Fortinbras is the hope for the future. Just like how in Link's Awakening, awakening the windfish and destroying the island allows Link to return to the waking world, the real world. And if you manage to complete Link's Awakening with 0 deaths, you're rewarded with this cutscene. The game is trying to show the player that not everything can last forever. Just because it has to end doesn't mean that it never happened. No matter how fun an experience, dream, or moment in time, eventually we all need to wake up, move on, and grow up. And this fixed ending only works because of the specific lessons that this story is trying to tell. The Last of Us Part 2 is a technical marvel and does many things very well, but one of its major glowing issues is the fact that its core gameplay entirely conflicts with its ending and the message of the story. The game tries to preach to you about the destructive cycle of violence while having core gaming mechanics that consist of fucking murdering everyone. If you want to hear more about that specifically, go watch this video by Nakey Jakey. It's amazing. The greatest stories ever told are ones that know how and when to end. In an age where the goal of every piece of media is to franchise and expand, creating more formulaic copies until the series is a shell of its former self, dragging in characters and events from past installments and warping them beyond what originally made them enjoyable, reducing them to cameos and references. Funnily enough, all things that later Zelda games are arguably guilty of. Link's Awakening looks that in the eye and says no, featuring characters and music that's almost never referenced again, ending the game tragically and definitively. Similar to previous games, there's only one way forward and you presume that good will triumph. But that clear sense of purpose and assumption is slowly turned against you and the people that you've come to know, forcing you to come to the fact that while this has been an amazing dream, every dream has to end. No adventure can last forever, and instead of fighting that, Link's Awakening embraces it, gives you the greatest adventure that it can, and then teaches you how to move on. Thank you for watching. If you did enjoy, please consider subscribing. I do this weekly, and click here to watch a video where I rank every single Zelda game based on their aesthetic.